then one way to maybe get courts to rethink this stupid unitary executive idea is to send bulldozers to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And just say, all right, you have 30 minutes or we're sending them in.
I mean, I guess.
That would be on firmer constitutional footing as far as John Roberts is concerned than like having an independent statistical. You know what I mean? Like,
sure, I don't know, bulldoze the Supreme Court.
Hey, everyone, you're listening to a free preview of the Politics Podcast. This week, we are going to talk about our quickening transformation into a banana republic. As Donald Trump's political project crumbles, he's not looking for ways to get right with the public. He's trying to wield power wherever and wherever he can, while he still can. And it's causing some problems. So we'll look at Trump's political infiltration of the Census Bureau, his new trade war with Canada, his intervention in the beef industry, and various other abuses. If you're watching this on YouTube, help us find new viewers and listeners. Hit like, hit subscribe, leave some comments, whatever. Engagement, right? If you're old school and you're listening to this on podcast listener and want to hear the whole conversation, you can go to politics.fm and upgrade your subscription. Hello and welcome to the Politics Podcast. I'm Brian Beutler.
I'm Matthew Iglesias.
So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but I have us talking about the Canada trade war, which is like probably the biggest news story. I have us talking about the political infiltration of the Census Bureau, which is like a more under the radar, but maybe more like fateful story. And then the row Trump is having with cattle farmers and their supporters in Congress over the price of beef and what Trump is doing to try to bring it down. Do you have any thoughts about what order we should take these in or how to thread them together?
Let me tell you, the latest news to hit the wires, I fired up National Post, which I believe is Canada's best-selling newspaper.
I thought you were going to say beef.com.
It's a center-right paper, but very prominent. The lead story here is that Trump says the U.S. is considering renaming Lake Ontario to Lake America. So it seems that we are not getting closer to resolution of the trade war with Canada. I think that this is like the most important story that is in the mix here because, it's at this interesting intersection where, the president's authority to conduct himself as the chief diplomat of the United States of America is not really legally contestable. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like an abuse of power to conduct negotiations with foreign countries as the president of the United States. It's the essence of the job. And Trump is really bad at it, and this has been a consistent theme of his second administration. And we're sort of like going full loop with the renaming of bodies of water. And I thought one of the most interesting...
Oh, no. He previewed this. He was going to rename the Strait of Hormuz also.
Yeah.
Or like, I forget what he was going to call it, the Strait of America, or if he was going to make it like an American waterway or...
I mean, he did this Gulf of America thing, right at the beginning. And, I think it's like important to get that, like, I remember like my message testing friends, they ran the numbers on that. People were really not into renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. It wasn't important to people because it had no impact on their lives. But he started this whole thing with like Canada's going to be the 51st state and referring to Justin Trudeau as governor, just like as a gag during the transition. I think there was no purpose to any of it, but it has genuinely upended Canadian politics. It has upended the US-Canada relationship. It has really come to a head with these latest trade negotiations. The consequences of this breakdown for the Canadian economy are going to be quite bad. And they will be bad for the United States to a lesser extent then they will be bad for Canada. Just like the war in Iran has been much worse for the Iranian economy than it has been for the American economy. But these are negative sum moves that Trump makes against foreign countries that he perceives to be weaker than us. And he deliberately inflicts economic pain on average everyday Americans on the theory that it will be even more painful to average everyday Iranians, average everyday Canadians. Maybe Denmark will be next or something. But the difference is that like the American voters have no interest in these initiatives. Like there's nobody anywhere is like fired up about how we've got to really stick it to Canada. And he has no legs to stand on. And I think it's important for American politicians and American media figures, et cetera, to communicate this like as clearly as we possibly can to Canadian stakeholders that like I think the American people are with me on this, are prepared to like completely surrender on all of these trade negotiation sticking points if we can get rid of Trump. Like they ought to hold the line and help Republicans lose, and Trump will get completely rolled on this. Like nobody cares at all about anything he's trying to achieve.
You said a couple interesting things there. One is that he has no legs to stand on. Have you seen the like speculation that the weird bulge he has in the ass of his trousers might be an exoskeletal assist device to help him walk straight because of how he was dragging his leg for
Interesting. I assumed it was adult diapers.
Well, I think that's what people's minds went to first, but the shape is a bit off. It's boxier than, I mean, I don't know. I guess my awareness of adult diapers is a little thin. But the other thing you said that I want to push on is
not an experienced user.
Not yet.
Interesting.
Not yet. I got some time. The other thing I want to push on though is just like what you said is correct about like the head of state role for the president. But I want to push on your instinct that there's no abuse of power here, or your implication, I guess, because the president is the head of state. And if you have a president who has a naive or childish or narcissistic view of American power, like doesn't know anything about the alliance system and the trading systems that we set up for our advantage, and why they work in a kind of soft power way and like in a benevolent leadership sort of way. And you just think we have all the guns, we have all the money, so we get to tell people what to do and they better listen or else, right? A president can come in with that mindset and can do things that are not abuses of power to try to manifest that, right? Like, hey, we're going to talk about annexing you, right? We're going to talk about renaming bodies of water that are named after you, after us. And it's like, there's no illegality there. There's nothing to sue over. There's nothing to impeach over. It's just being an asshole, you know? But the wielding of tax power essentially to accomplish these goals is an abuse of power. I mean, the Supreme Court has already said he can't do this. It was an abuse of power before the Supreme Court ruled. The Supreme Court simply confirmed it was an abuse of power. And then instead of being like, hey, it turns out I'm not allowed to operate in the world this way, Trump went back to the well. He is now, I believe, using the tariff authorities inscribed in the Trade Act that gave rise to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that plunged us into the Depression, in order to justify the same kind of tariffs that he was imposing before to the same ends, right? Like he's just trying to bring other countries to heel. And that is why we're in the trade war with Canada. Like if he had not decided he wanted to fuss around with our trading arrangement with Canada, but he did want to be a jerk about them being the 51st state, they would have been mad about it. They would have been like, what the fuck is with you guys? Like nominating an asshole for president 3 times, electing him twice, you know? But we wouldn't be in this situation. It's the abuse of power that has it so that all of Canada is ready to experience economic pain in order to impose economic pain on Americans so that we turn on Trump. That's what happened, right?
Sure. Yes. I mean, yes. I agree with that as far as it goes. I just mean to say that there's no like, on some level, the genuine powers of the president of the United States are like daunting, and it's like there will be a kind of state of emergency as long as Donald Trump is wielding those powers, particularly because the judicial check, even when it is functioning as it like sort of is on the International Economic Emergency Act, is a weak check against this kind of thing, right? I mean, the president's legislative authority is quite circumscribed in terms of like, can you make permanent policy changes to, like the structure of Social Security or something. But like the conduct of international relations, you just like, you have a lot of tools. Things happen in real time. It takes a long time for these things to go through checks and stuff. And it's like, I mean, it's a bad situation.
I mean, I
think, and we've seen, I mean, look, Susan Collins is behind the 8 ball coming in November. And she's like saying she doesn't think this is a good idea. We shouldn't have this trade war with Canada, et cetera. But it's like, there's nothing she can do any more than anybody else can do other than like come foursquare for like getting Trump out of power by any means possible. And like, it's just like everybody has to understand that that's the reality of this situation, that like he is totally out of control in his comprehension of the world. He just like, he really believes this is when he was running casinos in Atlantic City. He ran this play on his contractors where they would do work for him. And then he would say, oh, you didn't do it well. I'm not going to pay you what we agreed on. I'm going to pay you like way less than that. And they'd say like, fuck you. Like, you've got to pay what you owe me. And then he would say, well, look, like you could hire a lawyer and sue me, but I have lawyers on retainer because this is like a big company. And so I'll fight you out and it'll cost you a bunch of money and it'll take a long time and maybe you'll win or maybe you'll lose. Or we could settle right now for 50 cents on the dollar. And he found that in a lot of cases like that worked. It worked for him. And supposedly that should do like devastating impact to your reputation and make it hard for you to continue in business. But he just kept moving on to other things and has been very successful with this approach of bullying people and breach of faith. And he had some success with it in trade negotiations in his first term, but he's like jumped the skids, and like the other powers of the world are in a tough situation. But like, I think the best thing for them to do is what Prime Minister Carney is doing here and holding tough and trying to, be bipartisan within the Canadian political context and like level with people that they are going to have to suffer for a bit in order to preserve their country's, independence on the world stage. But just that like, but most Americans are on his side, and I don't know. I don't know what else we can do. Yeah, I do. Beyond communicating that.
Look, like it would be nice if Susan Collins really did do a full face turn and say, I voted for Trump's impeachment after or conviction after the insurrection, but then he mounted a comeback, and maybe we decided we were going to look past all that, but like, it's just clear now on the second or third go around that he can't be trusted with any power. And so he just needs to be out. And just like, I will switch parties if whatever the case may be. Right. But there is more. She has made her peace with it in some obvious way because she has a lot of power, right? Between nothing and being a Republican for impeaching and removing him. Right. Like, she is eager to get appropriations passed with like minimal conditions, right? Like, she's not out there being like, look, like I'm in the minority in my party, but they have to do what I say on these spending bills, and we're going to use them to check Trump. She just tries to get them out of her way.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's what I mean, though. I mean, it's like she is part of the Republican Senate majority. She's part of the judicial confirmations conveyor belt. But also just like, members of Congress who've issued like statements about Trump's different trade things are like, we could be passing new legislation to reduce presidential discretion over this, or even just like I mean, you can tell the difference between somebody who is trying to distance themselves from something and somebody who is working overtime to try to stop it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also like, I don't know what would happen if right now, if I don't even think Congress is like doing anything right now, but like if there were votes on legislation to stop the trade war, like there have been votes to stop the war in Iran, like what would Republicans, how would they vote on that right now? And like, how would they vote on it next year if Democrats take over Congress? It's like, there are, if you just imagine that like impeachment and removal is not actually an option, and if you just accept that the Supreme Court is bought in at some level to Trump succeeding, to Trump making it through his term, being like, it's not just that the judicial system sort of works vis-a-vis tariffs. It's that it doesn't work at all vis-a-vis someone like Trump, but particularly because the justices have picked an approach to jurisprudence that lets him govern as a tyrant for long stretches at a time, right? It's not just foreign affairs. It's not just trade policy. It's like he's trying to implement a new rule that would basically make it impossible for blue states to use mail ballots. And they're saying, oh, we can't do anything about it until he like implements the policy. And I don't think it has to be the case that that's how the judicial system operates, right? Like there can be a line past which something is just so like,
sure,
right? Like where the court could say, no, we're going to stop you before you even like finish drafting this order. But basically they say, hey, whatever you want to say is within your power in an executive order. You're going to get several weeks, if not several months, to just pretend that that's what the law of the land is. And then like by the time we finally rule, there will have been some damage done. And so like the system with Republicans not being willing to do anything and the courts kind of allowing him to operate in this way, create this kind of like, I don't think that the Canadians think that this is going to be American policy forever or for very long. But there's just like there's no mechanism in the system until Democrats take power that can interrupt it, and so they have no choice but to treat it like America is like basically no longer an ally.
Well, no, but I mean, I actually think I think it goes a little bit in the other direction, right? Which is that if you were a Canadian and your view of this was that there was like a strong bipartisan consensus in the United States of America that like we need to start treating Canada as like a colony to be expropriated, then as a Canadian, I think there's like a case for just giving in, to what Trump is demanding, because like we actually are the stronger party in this negotiation. It's like, so it's important. Like, I think it's better for Democrats if the Canadians stay firm, right? Rather than, because it'll be a political win for Trump if he succeeds in bullying them into submitting.
What I'm saying is we are outsourcing checking and balancing to Canada.
Yes, exactly. But so I think in turn, like it's important for like Canadians to understand. I mean, I think they know this, but I just like, hear it from me, whatever, that it's like, there's no evidence that anybody in the country like thinks this is a good course of action other than Donald Trump. But he has this like gang of flunkies who are going to go along with it. And like fucking JD Vance at a speech, he went to Maine, where again, Susan Collins is like nominally not supportive of this course of action. And Vance is this rally in Brewer with Paul LePage, who's running for the House seat there. Collins doesn't go to the rally. And Vance at the rally refers to Canada as a state. And then ha 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 is like, oh, it was a Freudian slip. And it's like, this is what Republicans are about now. And it's not something voters like. It's not something their voters even care about. And it's like, if you can beat the Republicans, like there will be a serious effort to roll this back. But like, they've got to be beaten. Both the chuckleheads who attend the Vance rally and the ones who try to distance themselves from the Vance rally, but are still going to be voted by 80, 90% of the same people and aligned with them on 90% of stuff. I wish, every Democrat I've seen who spoke about this, has been obviously critical of the Trump administration. But like, I would like to see them go further, so like Doug Ford is the premier of Ontario. He is a conservative politician, not from Mark Carney's party. But they are aligned on this. And Carney has made a big show of doing like a Team Canada approach to the negotiation, et cetera, et cetera. And, I would love to see Gretchen Whitmer and Kathy Hochul, who are governors of the, states that neighbor Ontario, or frankly, Schumer and Jeffries, like go to Toronto and meet with Premier Ford and like talk about how they are on his side in this and like want to see this brought to a successful conclusion, because it like trade with Canada, like it almost sounds like a joke, like a boring issue. But in terms of things that are at the intersection of like high-minded, but also really do impact people's like jobs and livelihoods in a concrete way.
Second biggest trading partner, right? Like very close to Mexico to be our first.
I think it was ahead of Mexico. But it's not just like that there's a large volume of trade between the United States and Canada, the way there is with China, but it's very sort of intimate trading relationships, like a lot. I mean, the reason Susan Collins was saying this, right, is that like a lot of Maine blueberries just like go to Canadian like freezing operations, just like because the United States and Canada are next to each other, and because Canada's main population centers are all like at the border, there are lots of parts of the United States where like the closest like city is in Canada. It's not like the bulk of the United States because our population isn't distributed right up against the northern border, but like for a significant minority of Americans have just like very close, practical, workaday economic relationships with Canada. And to just like blow that up for no reason is like genuinely terrible. It's like the egregious aspects of Trump's personality that drive liberals insane, but like manifesting in a way that has a like real tangible impact on people's lives, instead of just being like, oh, I feel so ashamed for my country or something. Like
I've been wanting Democrats to basically like articulate strong bargaining positions in public since like the beginning of this term about continuing resolutions, or about how they're going to legislate if they take over the House and Senate in early next year. Because like I've seen Republicans use this successfully as a way to anchor negotiations and discourse in like favorable territory, right? Like it's how John Boehner like ate Obama's lunch in the first debt ceiling fight. It was like, he said, we're just not going to do any tax increases and a dollar for dollar trade borrowing authority for spending cuts. And like, that was his position and it held, And I think that like, that is a especially against somebody like Trump, whose, I guess, whole quote unquote success in life has come from like playing games with bargaining positions, just to be like, this is our position, we're holding firm, and you're not going to bully us out of it, is a way to kind of to keep to like limit his ability to maneuver. But I think that they could kind of take what I've been talking about and apply it to these situations, like with the trade war in Canada, where they're just kind of like openly brainstorming about what it's going to take for a new Congress to make the situation tolerable for the next 2 years, right? Republicans aren't going to provide the votes to remove him from office, so he needs to be straitjacketed. And so, like, you could imagine a war powers act, but for trade wars, right? Like, that basically gives Congress the power to end a trade war that has no support basis in the United States and has thin, if any, legal justification, right? And like similarly, if the Supreme Court, like, I think that there need to be huge reforms to the Supreme Court, but if the Supreme Court is going to assert, we have a thing, it's called the major questions doctrine, and now you're going to have to live with it. And it's like, if you try to do anything from the executive branch that looks to us like new law, then we are going to use the largeness of it as a basis for saying you can't do it. If that's what they're going to say, then Congress should say, okay, well, if that's the case, then you need to use that authority. You can't let major questions loom for 2 years before you say, actually, that was illegal. You have to come in and say, hey, that's a major question. Like, maybe you're going to prevail, but it can't be, like, in effect, the law until we get around to it, right? But those things don't go together. And so we're going to require you, the Supreme Court, to actually, like, put your money where your mouth is on these issues. And, like, if you did both of those two things, the trade war would go away.
Yes.
Like, it just wouldn't.
No, I mean, like, I think.
But they have to say it. They have to say, like, we are going to reassert control over the situation in these ways. And the only way Trump is going to prevail and continue to wage this illegal and stupid trade war is if Republicans in Congress say they're going to kill the legislation, right?
Yeah, I
like, say it now so that they have to go campaign on, like, hey, we're going to continue the trade war into next year.
Yes. No, I mean, I think that that's right. But also just, there's this kind of ricocheting around about, like, affordability, as an issue, and, is clearly very important to people, but also, wonks sometimes, like, struggle to come up with like ideas that, will really deliver, like, fast relief on prices. And just saying, like, the Democrats will push for a unilateral end to these trade wars is, like, the single most concrete, fast-acting thing you can do to bring the price of anything down. Now, the aggregate scale of the impact, like, who's to say? But, like, the direction, the sign is totally unambiguous. So can you take a break and talk about beef? Because,
well, I mean, don't you just want to say, like, Trump is trying to actually bring the price of beef down?
Yeah, no, and I mean, and this is, like, I think, like, a weird blunder by Democrats on the beef front.
Okay, I want to get to it, but I do want to say one more thing before we take the break about because we haven't really talked about the specifics of it, like why the negotiation fell apart, why Trump is now going to try to impose these tariffs on Canada, and why he thinks this is a winning maneuver. And like, you kind of got at the psychology, like, he's a sick, degenerate person, and then he used his sick, degenerate tactics to make a lot of money in the private sector by bullying people, essentially. And he's trying to bring that to foreign affairs without having any human touch or appreciation for how people will like willingly endure hardship in order to vindicate their own dignity, right? And not be pushed around. Like like people will sleep better knowing that they stood up for themselves. And he doesn't process that, right? But like he should at this point have people around him who are like, you can't actually treat other countries this way because they will then develop the will to resist you. And you have not built up the will to pursue the fight in the first place at home. And that's going to create an imbalance that we're going to be on the losing side of. And over time, as in Iran, as probably in this case, we're going to lose, right? And like instead, it's like the people around him are, I guess, like, because they want to keep that, like they know better, but they're helping Trump along into these losing fights. And it like makes me wonder, like, what is motivating them? Because I don't think pure sycophancy really answers the question. And like when I was reading the New York Times deep dive into how the negotiations fell apart, like Howard Lutnick ends up at the center of it. He ends up at the center of a lot of the administration's nonsense. And then you find out that he's getting his beak wet in some way or another. And I'm wondering if do you think direct corruption within the administration is like the decisive factor here, where they know this is a loser on the politics and they know that Trump is like a little bit too addled of a person to see that. But instead of trying to stop him, they're going to go along with it because they can make money.
But I don't know. I mean, you know, the thing
like,
that we
specifically,
see,
I'm thinking like we're gonna like. There's one of the sticking points was this. There's protections in Canada for French language movies and music and things like that, so that they get surfaced on streaming services and stuff like that. And like you were telling me yesterday, this has been a bone of contention, but a small one, going back to the
right. So this is what I think.
But just as with Iran, like no other president was like, hey, we're going to get tricked into using this as a basis for blowing up the U.S.-Canada relationship because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But Trump got tricked into the Iran war, and Trump seems to have gotten like tricked into this trade war over something that's really unimportant. And I feel like someone's making money on it.
Right. So the specific thing that's at issue here, Canada has long had a set of rules that are called Canadian content rules. Canadians call it CanCon. And it gives sort of preference to Canadian-made cultural products on Canadian television and terrestrial radio. And it gets funny because things get like, there's like multiple creative people like involved in the production of something. So like how Canadian something is can vary. So like an Alanis Morissette song, right, like is Canadian, but like it's, I think like more Canadian if it's a song about hockey or something. This comes up a lot in movie and television. Anyway, Hollywood's official position has always been that this is bad. And the American government's official position, going back, there was a US-Canada free trade agreement that was signed, and then there was NAFTA, and then there was Trans-Pacific Partnership that was going to include Canada. It has always, always, always been the case. The way the US Trade Representative's office works is they like take incoming from various like American corporate lobbyists, and they're like, give us your wish list in these negotiations. And Hollywood always says, we want you to get rid of the CanCon rules. And the USTR always looks at it and they're like, yes, this does violate like our concept of free trade. We have an open market to Canadian content in the United States. We believe the Canadian market should also be open on the same terms. But then they tell them like, guys, like this is not going to fly. It's just like it cuts to the core of Canadian national identity and it's not important. You know, like we're going to negotiate about auto parts. We're going to negotiate about agricultural products. We're going to negotiate about energy. But like, who fucking cares? You know, like whose songs play on Canadian radio. So we now update to the internet era. And traditional CanCon legislation does not like apply in a super obvious way to a streaming service. So Canada passed a law that's going to compel streaming platforms to like put Canadian content, and especially Francophone Canadian content, like in a more prominent place, on the whatever. And, understandably, like Netflix and Amazon and their competitors, like they don't like this. They don't want to comply with this rule. They want to just set their algorithms to maximize engagement the same way they do everywhere. But they convinced the Trump administration to like really negotiate hard on this rather than get the normal kind of like pat on the head, like we're going to talk about things that we care about.
Did the algorithm convince Jeff Bezos to make the Melania documentary? Is that how that worked?
Well,
was that just pure business?
So then, the question is like, why? Like, and, it'll be interesting to see further reporting about this. Like, is this just the Trump administration being stupid and like saying yes to a lobbying request that other American administrations have been downplaying? There's some suggestion in this this piece by Martina Stevis-Grindef that like the U.S. trade representative kind of like had a handle on this stuff, and then Lutnick and others like swept in and like blew up his own negotiating strategy. You have other people from the Trump administration who are like denying that this was the case, but like Carney says that it's true. Mark Carney, as far as I know, is not a huge liar in the way that Donald Trump is,
and Lutnick too. And like I don't think Mark Carney like makes trades on the basis of how negotiations are faring. And so yeah, like my two suspicions are that there was illicit trading, and also that like the Ellisons or whoever, yes, like got into Trump and Lutnick's ear, but also there was like like an oligarchy element to why this happened in the way it did. And like, even just listening to you talk, like what would happen if, like have the people at the streaming services contemplated what would happen if they like worked their will and like ran roughshod over Francophone Canadians? Like, do they really think that it would hurt their business? And if so, how much? Because like, if this is an issue that's near and dear enough to their hearts to like maybe imperil the Canadian Union, like wouldn't they maybe boycott the services and like you just lose more customers?
No, I mean, I get it. It's economically trivial. And like, I can't, I mean, look, we are not talking about data centers this week, but like clearly Donald Trump is like over leveraged on the American big tech industry, right? How much of that is like his personal financial wheeling dealings? How much of it is like Jared Kushner? How much of it is whatever deal he may or may not have made with Andreessen Horowitz? How much of it is just that like like people are really mad about the economy, but the stock market is doing really, really well. So he's just completely mind melded with like Magnificent Seven tech stocks. Like, I don't know. It would be fascinating to see more reporting on this. I cannot imagine any prior set of American trade authorities deciding that this third tier ask by tech companies is like worth a serious fight over, as opposed to say like the Trump administration is also championing big tech in this fight with the European Union over some kind of digital services tax. And I think that that's the kind of issue where most American administrations would have gone to bat for the tech industry because it involves hundreds of billions of dollars of actual revenue. And also like, I don't know, it's like, sure, like Europe wants to create a tax that only American companies pay. And like, I can see why they want to do that, but also like, whatever, like, fuck you. This is, for better or worse, like the terms of Canada existing as a country are that Canada as a whole will protect the integrity of the Francophone minority. Like the country will not exist if they give in on this. And it's paired with all the 51st state stuff, et cetera, means that like in Canada, they treat all of this as like a genuine threat. Here, the masthead editorial in the Globe and Mail is "A free Canada is worth the sacrifice. Trump's thuggishness has made clear that the stakes are no longer just trade, but Canada's survival as an independent country." I think to a lot of Americans, like that sounds bombastic, but like it is genuinely how like Canadian elites perceive this situation. And he's bitten off more than he can chew. But I think it is helpful. It would be helpful for Democrats to make as clear as possible that like, I said this yesterday, and it was I think received wrongly by some Canadian commentators. I'm not saying like, "Dear Canada, please don't blame me. I didn't do this." I'm saying that like Democrats need to convey to Canadians that like this is Trump's thing, and that like if they obtain more political power, they will work to reverse it, because like there is nobody in America who like wants to crush Canadians' sovereignty. Like it's just not a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to be able to get to it on this episode, but the other piece of this that helped blow things up is that Trump wants the authority to dictate Canadian tariffs, I think, on other countries.
Right.
So they really are trying to wield gubernatorial power.
No, well, here's why I want to go after the break, and then I want to complain about protectionist Democrats.
Okay. If you want to hear us complain about protectionist Democrats and the price of beef, and talk about the Census Bureau and maybe some other stuff, go to politics.fm and upgrade your subscription.